This is the NTA Podcast. Creators going head to head, fighting each other on trivial issues to do with the creator economy. And now your host, Dave Wiskus.
I love it. That's going to be the new intro from now on. Well, I should introduce you. This is Sam Reich from Dropout.
Thank you.
I asked the audience who they would like to see me have on the show, and the two biggest responses were the jet lag people and you. There are, in history, two streaming services that were independently built by creators that have maintained their existence successfully.
Yes.
And you and I are the people behind those two things. More people have walked on the moon than have done what we've done. And I don't necessarily mean that as...
I think we can all agree that's less impressive.
Yeah, I'm not saying what an accomplishment. I mean, kind of, but relative to the moon. But more than just like this is a tricky thing to pull off. And we're early enough in an industry where not enough interesting stuff maybe has been tried. So who knows what combination of luck or opportunity or whatever skill, market savviness we both have. But I don't often get to talk to people who have done this because the only people who has done this is you.
Yeah, whatever it is that we have, I think we could both agree that we are better men than Neil Armstrong.
Yeah. I don't want to do like a backstory interview thing because those are always terrible, but I do want for context as we go through, because you're a very different kind of creator.
Sure.
You're not like YouTuber style creator the way that many of the folks that we talk to here are. You had a different path.
Sure.
I want you to talk just for a second about like the differences, the difference in your path. So anyone who's in the audience who isn't familiar with you can get a sense of context, and the folks who are, we can bring the context the other direction.
For sure. I guess let me try to make a long story not so self-indulgent. So over the course of my career, I've sort of straddled the line always between this sort of notion of being a creator. I think I was a creator before the term creator was really around. I considered myself a filmmaker before I was anything, and being an executive. So when CollegeHumor first plucked me out of my comedy group, I was 21 years old. My comedy group at the time was making videos for the internet prior to Flash Video. So what we were doing is essentially creating sketches and then uploading them as QuickTime files to a website where our fans were downloading them and watching them.
Wow.
That's a little time capsule for you. It's funny, when I first started in the CollegeHumor office, Jake Lodwick and Zach Klein were huddled in another room in the same office developing Vimeo. A lot of people don't know that Vimeo sort of spun out of CollegeHumor. All that YouTube did that Vimeo did not do quickly enough was implement Flash Video.
Mm-hmm.
And once they did, it was like, game over. But I was hired by CollegeHumor as a one-man band video creator. I was responsible for video at CollegeHumor, whatever that meant. I was hired to figure that out for them. And I did it with the help of the editorial staff, who at that point were writers doing text articles for the website. Slowly but surely, we added staff member by staff member by staff member. So whereas my job was at first sort of co-writing, directing, producing, editing every video that went up on the website in the early days, eventually we were able to bring on support for me. And that eventually turned into a 25 plus person department, who then went to LA to produce television as well as create web video, which we did for a little while with shows like Anna Maroon's Everything and Hot Date. I mean, at this point, we were sort of half the company. We were like 40 to 50 people. And video became more and more so the kind of center of the company, thanks to branded content being, the sort of shift away from ad sales buys and towards branded content as a business model. So yeah, I'm blowing through a lot of history, but generally speaking, I was hired in 2006. We had a very short-lived MTV show called The CollegeHumor Show in 2009. We moved to LA to start doing more TV in 2013. And then the sort of last beat of this chapter, two final beats of this chapter, is we started Dropout in late 2018. That's when it premiered. And I took over the company in early 2020.
Interesting. So I didn't realize that the timelines aligned that much, because Nebula was what, May of 2018, something like that. So and then we didn't get any like traction until I think September of 2018. COVID kind of fucked up my sense of what a year was.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, same. Completely distorted.
What is time? Yeah, so roughly the same age. That's crazy.
Yeah. Did you, so you had a period there, Dave, of like treading water, not knowing if this was going to work or not.
And crazy enough, it was Vimeo who inspired it.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. Vimeo hit us up because they picked one of our creators and they're like, this guy should have his own streaming thing, his own over-the-top streaming service. And it's like, that guy makes a video every 6 months. How does that work?
Yeah, totally.
And they're like, well, who do you have that makes videos more frequently? And I'm like, there's nobody who makes videos daily where that would make any sense. The only way this would really work is if you had all of the what if we did that? And then Vimeo wanted to own the billing relationship with the customers. And that was a hard no for us. Because if we're going to do this,
for sure,
we're going to go big and we want to like future-proof against anything else that could happen. And we had no business relationship with Vimeo. So it wasn't a hard thing for us to say like, yeah, this isn't a good fit. And we went elsewhere.
Yeah.
But like you, we were born out of something else. We, Standard, the parent company, I started almost accidentally helping my friends book ads on their podcasts. And then mostly so I could get access to sponsors for my own podcast. And then word of mouth, you bring in more people. And then one day I realized like, well, I've accidentally built a full-time talent management thing here. I should probably do that more than 5 hours a week. And then ran that. Like our primary business was representing creators. And it was the idea was born out of just, would it be interesting to do something as a group?
Sure.
Initially, Standard, and the reason that it's even called Standard is the name was chosen to be the most forgettable name.
Sure, to fade into the background.
Yeah. Like a James Bond mission cover story.
Sure.
You should hear the word and instantly forget it.
Yeah.
So the hope was that there was no sense of umbrella, because in the podcast world, there was all these podcast networks and shows would leave or join. It was always a dramatic thing. And we wanted it to be like, well, a sense of independence, like who represents you behind the scenes doesn't really matter. That doesn't need to be a thing that is celebrated or announced, or when you leave, that's an announcement. So doing that in the background, we realized with Nebula, there's an opportunity to do something that was like, we're all together working on something. This can go in the foreground, and just playing with it more than any aspirations of mega success. We just play around with the idea. We didn't know that this would happen.
Yeah. I think what those companies clearly have in common is the sense of you in a sort of a service role, like a service to creators. It feels like Standard was meant to be in the background and Nebula is meant to be in the foreground, but even in the foreground, the purpose of Nebula is to sort of create a safe space for creators to thrive.
Yeah, I think of it as a foundation and umbrella. And those things can have different value for different types of creators. But initially, this was all built on like, let's build something that the creators can build on, where this isn't, they don't need to put our logo on stuff. They don't need to announce this.
Yes.
But we can give them tools that help them go and build their business. And with Nebula, it was just like trying to leverage the power of our scale at that point. And that turned out to be so much more effective than I would have thought. But the big difference then, and timelines are similar. I think a lot of the ethos is similar. But the difference between us is that we are both on the Standard side and the Nebula side, representative organizationally of a collection of creators, where you're more of like almost more like traditional media, where you build properties, then you bring people in to work on those things.
The difference, Dave, is that I took over the company and then I put myself as the star of my own show.
That's what I should do. This is the piece I'm missing.
Yeah. And basically just used it as my, selfish creative playground.
Is everything kind of just a star vehicle for you then? It's all one big
that's
scam?
Exactly right. That's what
all those subscribers giving money every month just to watch you.
I think you're right. I think there are ways in which what we're doing at Dropout is peculiarly traditional in the sense of, and we didn't necessarily, set out to be this way, but we are a network that, our business model is dirt simple at this point. We are a network that partners with talent to produce shows, although a large chunk of our development now happens internally. And then we share those shows with the world, and some of them really take off and others don't. And we are, aggressively using, call it organic channels to promote our shows.
What do you mean by organic channels?
We do very little, if any, paid marketing. If you had talked to me a month ago, I would say we do no paid marketing. We've just started to dip our toe in the water and see what paid marketing means to us. Mm-hmm. So the way that we promote Dropout and Dropout shows is quote unquote organic, which means social, right? It's TikTok, it's Instagram, it's YouTube, it's even Twitter is how we promote Dropout and its shows.
Can I tell you, we had a marketing call yesterday, and our CMO, Lior, was talking about Dropout as like the gold standard of what they want to try with their team. And because we do the influencer thing, and that's extremely effective for us. But beyond that, we're in a very experimental phase. We've only recently taken over the management of our own marketing budget and the responsibility for that. So it's like, okay, we know the influencer stuff works, and we're really good at that. What else can we try? What else can we do? Lior and their team, they're looking specifically at what Dropout is doing. And they came on the call and like, cool. We see Dropout doing this. We see Dropout doing this. I'm like, I could talk to Sam about this. Maybe we can make a connection here.
Just invite me onto the call. I'm happy to spill secrets.
Do you handle the marketing stuff yourself? Is there somebody on staff that does that? Do you have a CMO? Do you have a team?
Yeah, so we're a very small team, as you know. There's only 15 of us full time at Dropout.
That's crazy.
And one of our partners in the business, is this brilliant guy named Andrew Bridgman, and Andrew wears a lot of hats for us. He sort of simultaneously does everything social, everything community, and everything marketing. There's even another couple of jobs he does that I'm not mentioning. Andrew is the beating heart of the marketing effort. And what Andrew and I have done together is to sort of craft a strategy. And Andrew is largely responsible for implementing that. Although up until this past year, I was running Game Changers social accounts myself.
I still personally, every tweet you've ever seen from the Nebula Twitter account has been me. For anyone listening,
there's something to be said for that.
Me.
Yeah.
We're still in a stage where we don't have a team of copywriters who are coming up with the tone. So it's just sure. I'm using my gut to say the things I would say and building the voice as I go. And then hopefully others can pick that up and run with it later.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. There's this cheesy sort of political style cartoon that I reference sometimes, which shows the difference between leading from the front and leading from the back. Essentially being out in front of your troops or being sort of behind your troops offering direction. And I've always been a little bit more effective, for better or for worse. And I do say for better or for worse because I don't think it's super effective all the time, as sort of a front style leader where I'm I'm going to do it and figure out how it's done and then pass it off.
What I find in that style, though, is you have to, at points, stop yourself and move to the back and let other people feel trusted. Otherwise, it's always going to be me forever. And if I don't take my hand off the wheel and let somebody else grab it, then the entire, bus in this analogy will always need me to hold the wheel.
Absolutely. Delegation is really tricky. I think it's tricky. I think what I'd like to think is true is that we have such a high standard for performance in general that it's we are effective delegators when someone deserves it. And right now, if we look at Dropout's team, it is a team of A players. It's we have extraordinary people working for us full time. Part of that is, when we collapsed coming out of the ISC days, we were 100 plus employees and we had to whittle it down to 7. And then what we did at that point is we basically said, okay, as we're hiring people back, we're going to hire the best folks who have ever come through the company. And then when it came time to hire new people, we tried to, subject them to the same rigorous process.
Right. So what does that look like? What is the makeup of the team? So the sort of marketing and social media, I would love to have my people talk to your people. Anything you talking about, like getting into paid marketing and like how to do some of that stuff. I will give you everything we know in exchange for everything you know. I'll happily make that trade.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to do a knowledge share. But tell me about like what is the makeup of the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways we're a little under-resourced, as you could imagine, as 15 people, and in other ways we're growing in exactly the right way. So at a high level, right? There's myself and Andrew Bridgman and David Kearns. And Andrew his title is Chief Digital Officer. Again, he's responsible for a combination of like marketing, community, social. He also does some light syndication related stuff for us, sort of while he does that on top of everything else.
Syndication meaning?
We're using legacy College Humor content on Facebook and Snapchat and some other platforms to try to earn a little bit of extra money.
Exactly what I would have expected.
David, who is COO, is essentially both functions as a kind of, up until pretty recently, like the last 2 years, was sort of head of operations and head of production. We've since hired a head of production, Kyle Robach, who's unbelievable. He also essentially functions as a chief of staff. He's like a more natural leader than either myself or Andrew. He's more naturally social. He likes to cast himself as kind of like the company camp counselor, and he's great at that. Which frees me up a lot to be the sort of like artist weirdo kind of strategist that I am.
It's much more of like a creative team dynamic versus like a corporate dynamic. It's like where we are, I think another big difference that might not be obvious to audience is you guys, it's all VHX, right?
It is, yes. Vimeo OTT, they call themselves these days. Yeah.
Yeah, the Vimeo OTT stuff. So like you don't have to hire a team of engineers to run your streaming backend or build all of the things. Most, I believe this is right. It's either our production people, either the studios team or the engineering / product team. I believe engineering and product is our biggest team. So when you count our CTO and chief product officer, our project management team, all of the front-end engineers, back-end engineers, iOS, Android, Roku, smart TV, all of these engineers, the web streaming platform engineers, all of these people, because we built everything ourselves.
I know, Dave. I'm nauseous thinking about it.
It's a lot. I mean, we were using off-the-shelf stuff for a long time, and we just found that because we are a multi-tenant service, it is not like we have a collection of shows. We have a collection of creators. And this is a really important distinction for the kinds of things you and I do versus the kinds of things that you would expect from a Netflix or something. But there's a difference between a content streaming service and a creator streaming service. And we lean really hard into the latter. People sign up for Nebula not because they're excited about a show or a piece of content, but because they're excited about the creator or creators behind it. There's some exceptions, like I think Jetlag walks that line a little bit, but because of how we handle things, it's not like people submit videos to us and we release them at whatever time. In our world, all of our creators can upload the video and it's live whenever they say. So we have to build all parts of this thing where different people have access and capabilities within the channels that they own, but not somebody else's channel. So we keep things cordoned off. So it's not one big mansion with people in it. It's an apartment building.
Well, this dovetails into a really interesting question I'd be curious for your answer to, which is sort of like, I would doubt that you're hungry to sell Nebula and that would happen at any point in the near future. The same is true for us. Like I'm in it for the long term as far as Dropout is concerned. But when you look at like what your company is on paper, like what its value is, right? Like how do you look at yourself? You know, here's a stab at that question or a stab at that answer in order to frame it up for you. But I think you'll have a much better answer than I will. Is like, Nebula is a technology company. I mean, you have like 30 something engineers on staff, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And you are like the company and the company's sort of idealism and the way that it structured itself operationally is a part of the offer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a part of what makes Nebula Nebula.
It would be really hard for us to sell out structurally.
Sure.
Because Nebula is not a technology company. Standard is a technology company.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, Standard, the parent company, all of the employees are technically Standard employees. I'm the only person who technically works for both. It's all sort of like handled, contracted and whatnot. But yeah, it's the Standard team handles all of the engineering. So like Nebula outsources it to Standard's engineering team. And it was just simpler to do it that way. And so Nebula as a construct is a collection of intellectual property, not in video. We don't own any of the video content, the creators do. We own licenses to that content. So we have a bunch of content licenses, and we own the IP of the name Nebula and actually no, Standard owns the logo and Nebula licenses the logo from Standard. It's all, yeah.
Is the Standard team doing a lot that's not Nebula?
No, by design. And this only all happened because we had to draw lines when we had a minority investor come in like a year and a half ago. Not because they wanted control of certain things, but like that was the moment that we had to put some things on paper. And so Nebula as a thing, Nebula is the product and the idea, but like the team itself is still largely Standard. And it's all going to be muddy, and I'm sure that some lawyer somewhere on our team is going to be really fussy with how I phrase this. So I'm waving my hands a lot because I kind of have to. But Nebula is a streaming service, but a lot of the services provided to like the talent management side and the engineering stuff and a lot of like the marketing and all these are services provided by Standard to Nebula. So practically speaking, we're one company. Literally, it gets complicated. So when we think about like the heart of your question here, I think of like, what does an exit look like? Is the intent to like, what is the end game here?
Well, I think the question behind the question is just like, where's the value?
The value to whom?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%.
Because
this is.
You're right that there's no real eagerness to sell. We've been, that's certainly been speculated. We've certainly been accused of it. But I have no interest in an exit. I like my job. I like doing what we do. And I think that somebody else coming in and trying to run things, and this isn't a me versus them, it's more of like are you one of us? Like if creators don't own this, I don't know what the point is.
Totally fair. I think, by contrast, I mean, the reason, part of the reason you're so smart to own your technology and hire 30 engineers and build this yourself is that it's largely understood in our industry that where there is technology, there's the value. And that if you're relying on third parties to fulfill your technology, there's far less value there because you don't own the customer. Particularly, it's exactly what you said at the beginning of this conversation. We are a content company. We are not a technology company at all. We own everything we create, 100%. So
you're the opposite of us.
There are ways in which we are, we're similar to each other, and other ways in which we're foils, for sure.
So where's the value for you? It's in the content, right?
Yeah, it's the content. I mean, it's someone from the outside would need to come in and say, we think this video library has value. And it certainly, value, there's inherent value in like us owning the customer in the limited way that we do.
Yeah, subscriber revenue is a real thing. That is totally. How you would be valued is based on, it would presumably be based more on the subscriber revenue than on the value of the content.
That's probably true.
If someone were to come in and do like an equity play, private equity, or if you were to go public or whatever, my presumption, I could be wrong on this, but my assumption would be the way traditional investment or private investment would work would heavily favor the quantifiable. Here's how much money you're making from subscribers. Here's what we think the growth trajectory could be. Here's your costs. Here's your revenue. Versus like, this content sure is neat. I bet it's worth $1 zillion.
And what makes that a little bit complicated, given the way that we've structured the company, is that if you take me and you take Brennan Lee Mulligan out of the equation, the company is worth less because our shows are such an important part of keeping our business running today.
We're in a similar position where if someone were to come along and try to buy us, let's say that happens. Let's say somebody comes along and acquires us. No plans, not trying to make that happen. But if it were to happen, the only way it could work, the only way we have value is if the creators stay. And the creators only stay if they're getting value. So to your question, like, where's the value? The value is in the ecosystem. The value is in the structure for the creators to be able to build a business, to be able to build revenue, to be able to build a relationship with their audience. It's not in the tech, although that does have value for Standard, and it has value for Nebula in the sense that it's good for those things to, when I think of like my spirit animals in business are Tim Cook and Kevin Feige.
Sure.
I am much more interested in how do we build out our entire supply chain and own it ourselves to reduce cost and to make us more nimble and to do more cool and interesting creative things. How do we enable and empower the creative people who put all their effort into making the good stuff? And on the Kevin Feige side, how can I help a team of disparate creatives work together to build something that is bigger than any of them?
Talking to you, Dave, is always inspiring because you have like you're a real future thinker and you have ambition in this category. And I am still so traumatized from my days in corporate America. And these like, often what would happen is that we would like dream really big and then we would fail spectacularly. And I think that happened like at least 3 times over the course of our journey with IAC, where it's like finally we failed kind of out of the company and had to start from scratch. And so I'm afraid to dream too big.
I think that the fear is good. I was talking to Philip from Volksgeist recently about the similarities he and I share. He's a younger creator. He makes video essays about music stuff, but he's like a born hustler. He and I have similar backgrounds where we were the more or less white kids growing up in predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhoods and going to Black and Hispanic schools, being at like economic disadvantage in stranger or more, what's a non-problematic word I can use? Like neither of us come from like a particularly privileged upbringing. Like going to Ivy League schools was never in our future. That was never going to be a thing.
There's another thing we don't have in common.
Right. So there's like an element of, if the thing that we're doing right now, if this is not successful, we die. Either we stay at the bottom forever or we fight our way to the top. And when you have to either fight or die, your approach, your ability to look at the board and see moves that nobody else would see, when your livelihood is on the line, you're like really your ability to survive, your like literally your ability to have dinner that night could depend when you're growing up, could depend on how clever you are that day. You learn to be scrappy and hustle in a different way, I think. It forces you to think differently about every decision. And what I see a lot is amongst the creators that we work with, even really smart people, if I'm invited to a room, like if there's a room where it happens, and I'm invited to that room, there's 0% chance I don't go. If I hear that there's a room where it happens, I'm going to fight my way into the hallway so that if that door cracks open a little bit, I can shout into it and hopefully say something smart enough to get invited in. That's how I see the world. And not everybody does. And so there are people who will make what are, in my mind, crazy decisions or pass up incredible opportunities because they just had something else going on that day. Because for them, this isn't a matter of survival. They've never had to see it that way.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, I relate to components of that. You know, I did come from a very privileged background. I grew up right outside of Harvard. Both my parents were Harvard professors at one point. Very academic sort of world. But what was ingrained in me in a very early age was this notion of, if you go into entertainment, if you go into the arts, period, you are taking a vow of poverty. And when when I did make that decision, and I dropped out of high school at the age of 16.
Really?
And I never...
that we do have in common.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, both dropped out at 16.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, Dave. That's so funny. Whoa. Holy shit. That sense of like, I really need to hustle or I'm going to die is totally ingrained in me. Just the sense of like, by wanting to get into this business, I'm performing a high wire act.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what that sort of instilled in me in the way of work ethic and in the way of like calculated risk.
I had never thought of it this way. Well, like so many of the decisions I've made career-wise or the things that I've tried to do, professional musician, I made a pretty solid bid for professional screenwriter in my early 20s. Like all of podcaster, a YouTuber, all of the kinds of things I do I'm probably more open to doing the vow of poverty jobs where it's like high risk, high reward. Because like, what do I have to lose, right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. In a way, this is one big gamble. I think that as I've gotten older, I've become more conservative. And as things have gotten better, my attitude is, okay, bet less of the pie. It's like I'm sitting at a poker table with a lot of chips.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm never going all in ever again.
So you've built your own system. You've built your own track, your own playground. You can build whatever you want to. You can make the things you want to because you built the tools for yourself.
If I didn't, I would fail miserably. Like if I was playing the Hollywood game, I would suck at it. I did suck at it, you know? So like I've built a system that I can thrive within.
Well, isn't that the whole thing though? Like the people nobody does this sort of thing unless they weren't successful doing whatever everybody else does.
Yes. That's correct.
It only works. Like you only innovate when doing things that have already been done doesn't work for you.
100%. Someone told me the people who thrive at Saturday Night Live are the people who were popular in high school. And I heard that and I was like, that makes so much sense to me. I would be a catastrophic failure in that system. You know what I mean? Like, it's anything that requires social politics, I'm miserable at.
So what is the writing process then? I mean, like, you know, tell me how the things get made, but like when you go into writing is the wrong word, development, when you have an idea and you go into the room and you say, we're going to make this thing, who's there to say, that's dumb, don't do it?
Thank God those people do exist.
Same.
Right now we have this little internal development committee and we meet every week. And what we do is we pitch ideas sort of round robin style. And sometimes we get stuck on an idea and we give it life for a while. And I bring ideas to that meeting and other people bring ideas to that meeting and we poke holes in each other's ideas and we also fan the flames on each other's ideas when we really like them. It's group sport. I mean, it's a brain trust of people, some of whom are high stakeholders in the company and others of whom are just very creative people. And that's how we're doing it for now. And I'm leading those meetings.
Are you a yes and sort of leader?
Yeah, often. Yeah. I mean, I'm, you know, they say like, write drunk, edit sober. So,
okay.
it was like Hemingway.
I was going to say Hemingway. I think it's Hemingway.
But it's this notion of like, if you're in a brainstorm room, it's like bringing a lot of positive energy and that's later that you have to do the decision making.
Yeah.
We'll also bring to that meeting if anyone else has pitched us an idea or let's say talent comes to us and they're like, hey, I want to do something like this with you, or like we'll bring seeds from the outside world into that meeting to germinate.
Years ago, I had a meeting. This is such a weird story. I had a meeting with a woman named Sandy King, who she's a producer. She's worked on a ton of stuff. Her husband is John Carpenter.
Sure.
So I'm like at their house in Hollywood, her and her like writing partner, and we're talking about this project that we were thinking about doing. Never went anywhere, as most things do, but as we're talking it through and we're throwing ideas out there for the story, they kept beginning things with, ooh, here's the bad version. And then they would start talking about whatever thing. And then there's a lot of, oh, but I love that, but what if we change this part of it? And coming more from the tech industry, I was used to, you go into a room, you're like, all right, here's what I think we should do. And everybody goes, that sucks. And here's why. You're stupid. And so seeing people like throw out here's the bad idea, let's make it better.
Yeah.
Like a light bulb went off from me. It's like, oh shit, you don't have to just be a dick to everything everybody says. It's not about showing up with a completed painting. You show up with clay and you shape it together. It's much more sculpting. And that I love.
Terrific analogy. That's a big part of the creative process, I think, especially on the writing side of things. This notion of like, okay, I'm going to pitch a bad idea, or even I'm going to spit out a bad first draft. The important thing is that there is something there for us to be able to react to and mold.
Yeah, you can't shape a blank canvas. You can't shape a blank page.
Yes, exactly. And beware the genius, right? Beware the person who locks themselves in a room and comes out with a finished product. Mm-hmm. Because it's just not, it's a great way to arrive at a B-.
Or I guess even in the best case, it's a great way to become reliant on something you don't fully understand.
Yeah.
Even if they come out with
totally.
A+ work, then you've got like one person doing that and nobody learns from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this business that we're in, show development, production, it's just such a group sport. Mm-hmm. Such a group sport. And even though, we've sort of fetishized the role of showrunner, and I think showrunner is important. Someone who the buck stops with, or someone to help steer the ship. An ex-head writer of College Humor, Ben Joseph, has a phrase that I love, which is one gentle hand on the steering wheel. Even with Game Changer, which is like so very much my baby, I still allow for, so much of that is a collaborative effort between me and its creative team.
How much are you looking at the outside world? How much are you looking at the zeitgeist, or what are other people doing to inform? I guess the real question here is like, what is your relationship with the audience? How much finger do you have on the pulse of what they care about, and how much are you looking for inspiration?
I think I've got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I think that here's my relationship to the audience. First of all, I think feedback from the audience is super important. We've got 100,000 people in Discord.
Wait, what? How many people?
100,000 people in Discord.
Fuck me.
I know. Isn't that wild?
That's like a dropout Discord.
It's a dropout Discord. It's free for anyone to join, whether they're subscribed or not. But there's obviously huge incentive to be subscribed. Otherwise, you have no idea what's going on.
Right. But that is nuts.
Yeah.
This is I don't want to derail this, but the moderation on that must be awful. That must be a whole job. It is
entirely thanks to a group of wonderful mods that we have working for us who are Dropout fans and have free Dropout memberships, and who, when they're doing, we also have mods in our QC process.
Really?
Who get paid for that piece of it. But like our mods are extraordinary, like truly extraordinary. Shout out to Jack and Morgan and all the rest of them.
I can even hear the audience for this show right now. If they see the look on my face, they're like, does that mean we're going to get comments? No, it doesn't.
No. Well, we don't have comments on Dropout either, for I'm sure a lot of the same reasons that you don't. Discord kind of serves that purpose for us. But we get a lot of feedback. And a lot of that feedback is very valuable at the same time as your audience only knows what you've shown them. I mean, it's very like, there's an analogy. Oh, I could get in trouble for this, between that feedback process and like artificial intelligence, where it's like artificial intelligence does not know what's not fed into it.
Audience GPT.
So it's
exactly. Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So it's like they want more of what they've already seen, or they have ideas that have to do with things that they've already seen, but they can't be sort of like purely generative in the way that we can come from the outside.
Faster horses, right? They want faster horses. And that's fine. And there's a lot to be gained from that. And when we poll our audience, I've done this a couple times on Twitter, just asking like, what do you want to see more of? And so many of the people who follow us on Twitter, the most vocal audience tends to be jet lag fans. So when I say, what do you want to see more of? Everybody says game shows. And I'm like, boy, do I have a subscription service for you. It's called Dropout. But if we had asked a year ago what people wanted to see more of, they would have said explainer videos. And then we did jet lag, and now everybody loves that. So you can't go on what the audience says they want. You have to sort of predict a little bit and think of like what qualities does this audience collectively, what do they share? We have people who are really into travel stuff, people who are into logistics, people who are into nerdy science things. People, okay, what can we make out of those ingredients that they wouldn't have predicted? And that'll be
totally. It's funny because like Hollywood does this same thing where it's like, I remember in the days and weeks and months after Ted Lasso first was a hit, all of Hollywood suddenly went like, we need stuff that's wholesome,
earnest,
it's very reactive,
sincere,
and earnest. That's what the people want.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I don't know, maybe months later when Yellow Jackets came out, and then everybody went, we need the opposite. We need stuff that's like dark and brooding and mysterious. And it's like, just being caught in that perpetual state of like reacting to what's already been done is a quick way to chase your own tail into a hole. Whereas you kind of have to imagine, what do they don't know they want?
Yeah. A friend of mine once said that if you're just chasing after the competitor in front of you, then everything you make is going to look like your competitor's ass.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah. And
it's really great.
It's true. You end up making things, you can see the end product, but you don't understand the process that went into it. And the understanding of that process, I think, is really important. It's how you make something great is through that iteration. And back to what you're saying before, you don't want the genius coming out of the room and just setting something down because nobody else in the room knows how to work with that.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, so we have, and I don't know if you have or if it would make sense for you to have, criteria by which we're judging the potential success of a show. And what we've been using this system now for almost ever since I originally started at College Humor, like all the way back in 2006. There's this executive by the name of Michael Jackson. That's his real name. He used to be with Channel 4 in the UK. He was responsible for like all sorts of exciting stuff they did, including like putting all of Samuel Beckett's short plays on film, which is one of the coolest things I think Channel 4 has ever done.
That's cool.
He came in the early days of College Humor and he said, you need a sieve. And by a sieve, I mean a sort of a series of standards or series of mesh that all ideas are passing through in order to get done. And what the decision you have to make is, what does your sieve look like? What are the criteria that it's important that an idea be to you? And
this is good advice.
For sure. Super smart guy. And in the early days of College Humor, it was like, what goes viral on the internet was the sieve. It was like, we know the internet likes video games and music videos and, big physical moments and blah, 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 blah. How do we create content that falls through those categories? And today it's, very different, right? As we're producing content for Dropout.
And the things that the audience, the internet reacts to, we have that machine now. We have 175 creators and their teams out there producing the things that the internet will react to. Yeah. And so much of our sieve has been, if we do a project with this creator and then they tell their audience about it, is the audience going to sign up for the service? It's very conversion driven because our marketing engine is the creators themselves. Where lately, as we've taken over, we fund all of our own stuff on every front now. Content development for us is much less about let's give money to creators and see what they come up with, which was a fun experiment for a couple of years. But now, as we've done stuff like Jet Lag or the Prince, which was the trans reshaping of Shakespeare run as a 5-week theatrical play that we filmed, or Night of the Coconut, which is a sci-fi movie about an evil coconut with googly eyes. When we've done weirder stuff, it has been a bit more developed. We get more, I don't want to say like cultural cachet, not like we're getting Oscars or something. Although the Prince won a ton of awards. What we are getting is taken seriously as art in a way that an explainer video doesn't generally get taken seriously as art. And I don't mean to say anything negative about explainer videos. We have built our empire on explainer videos. Love them.
Yes.
But I think there's room for us to do more interesting things or use explainer videos and video essays and 4-hour rants about this bad person on the internet all great stuff. We can use that
Yeah.
as our launch pad to do bigger, more interesting,
Sure.
more mainstream adjacent, if not mainstream. Because you need to build a bridge there, right?
Closer and closer to your dream of being the A24 of the category.
Right. Or like treating creators in a certain way is important, and like empowering things is important. The thing that we're missing that A24 has is a shitload of Oscars. They have all of the fucking Oscars.
Of money.
Yes, that too. That's how you get it's like talent plus money equals Oscars, right? That's how you get that.
Sure.
Their office is right across the street from us. I've thought about just standing outside, waiting until I'm just going to pull up their LinkedIn, wait until I recognize somebody and just ask for a meeting. Like, hey, I want to pick your brains on some stuff. Let's see how this goes.
The room where it happens, Dave.
Right,
you know?
right.
That's
Gotta get
hustle
clever.
culture.
I can see their conference room from my desk. When they're on a Zoom call, I can see the screen. I'm not even joking. I can literally see when they're on Zoom calls. And I'm like, get some binoculars. Like, what can I extrapolate from this?
I love to imagine you just, like watching, like, whoever it is, John Malkovich on Zoom, talking about some project. I don't know. That's who I go to for A24. I think that you could not take swings on stuff that feels outside of Nebula's sweet spot if you didn't have a bigger vision than your fans necessarily for like what makes Nebula. Or, for that matter, a bigger sieve, right? Like a sort of like a higher standard or a vision for the future that's bigger than what Nebula is right now. We're the same. Like our audience, if they could peek into our development folder, would be like dumbfounded by some of the stuff that we have in there.
What the fuck are you doing?
Where does this come from? Like, this isn't what I think of Dropout today. And that's because the set of standards that we're developing are like, they're certainly strategic. Don't get me wrong. They're very strategic, but they are, probably a year or two out into the future based on where we are.
Yeah. And even for us internally, creators, I had a creator come to me a week or so ago saying like, well, are we not still like an educational streaming service? I'm like, when were we? Our biggest projects in the last year were Trans Shakespeare, Evil Coconut, and Game Show.
Yeah.
Where's the education in this? I have decided I'm going to start saying, because I've always like danced around by saying like education-ish, education-y, trying to play with a little bit. I think that ultimately it does a disservice. It makes it feel academic. And I don't think that our philosophy or our ethos has changed, but my new phrasing for this is we're not educational, we're nutritious. Anything we do has to have some substance. It has to enrich you in some way. That can mean anything. It can't be empty calories. There's no junk food here. There's no dumb bullshit. There's no prank videos. There's no stupid memes. Mostly, like it needs to like this has to have some meaning to it. For us, the big picture, I have not been shy about this. I want to build a bridge into people's living rooms. I want to build a bridge into the way people think about creators within pop culture. And you're not necessarily going to get there with Mr. Beast taking up all of the oxygen in the room. And you're not going to get there with a public perception of creators or YouTubers or TikTokers as like dipshit dilettantes who lucked into fame. What you need to do is prove that you're capable of making things. And part of why I point to A24 is they're doing they're releasing the Raka Raka movie. They're doing Backrooms with the Backrooms kid. He's filming it. He's directing the movie over this summer. Like they're doing stuff with YouTubers. They see the value there. And if they're willing to reach just a little bit in our direction, we need to start reaching a little bit in that direction, not by thinking that if I work hard enough on YouTube, then I'll be a celebrity and I can like ditch my thing and go start a late night talk show. Because that doesn't work. But you have to build towards. And what is the real bridge between these two worlds?
That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I love A24 as a company, but I'm woefully under-researched on them. But I think that what I would just observe that they've done is sort of brought a lot of attention back to like the art of filmmaking. I mean, even right there in the logo, the way the logo sort of crackles like old school film, there's this appreciation of like the craft of film
in
a way that I don't think that, Hollywood, especially as Hollywood goes more theme park ride, kind of like distances itself from. And what I hear you saying, which makes a lot of sense to me, is, creator as craftsperson.
Yes. I would describe their philosophy, and I could be off base. I'm speaking from what I've seen more than what they've said. But my read on it is where traditional production studios, traditional Hollywood companies are all about what will make the audience happy. And A24's core foundation seems to be what will make the filmmakers happy. And the audience will be happy if you make the filmmakers happy. And that is exactly where we come from. Our job is not to make the Nebula audience happy. Our job is to enrich and make the creators happy. And it's their job to make the audience happy. We just have to give them the tools to do their job. And then we'll win.
Something I really appreciate that A24 has done, as well as like old school Adult Swim, is because their brand stands for alternative. It's like they could create stuff that's critically well received or terribly received, and it's all on brand.
They have some affordance there. Like,
our brand is to do stuff that's like wild. So it's like going to be polarizing. That's the point.
So what is your big picture? And this is going to change and evolve over time, but what is your, not end game, but what is the goal? What is what are the stars you're reaching for here?
That's a good question, Dave. It's kind of like I said earlier, I'm afraid to be too ambitious. Like, I think we've been living pretty show by show, and that we will continue to for a while. If we look at like what Dropout is and like why people like Dropout today, it's a fewfold. People love that we're like a family of talent. Mm-hmm. So like one of the things that we've had to really think about is how do we introduce new folks to that equation and offer them like a good landing? You know what I mean? Because like we don't want to be a network that's like only 10 faces, but how do we like grow in a way?
Introducing new talent, you mean?
Yeah, introducing new talent and supporting that talent in such a way that the audience really embraces them is one thing we're thinking about. We're thinking about how do we graduate from being like the game or panel show network into something that's like a little broader, that stands for something a little broader. And like what that is, I could say out loud, but I'd rather just show you.
Yeah.
Either we succeed at that or don't, and the proof will be in the work. It won't be because I say it out loud.
What do you see as the core of the Dropout brand? Most people would think game show or panel show or comedy. How do you see it?
Yeah, well, today it's unscripted comedy for sure. If you look at what's working for us, it's like when we started Dropout, we were like, okay, we're going to have the longer form, unscripted, personality-based stuff, and that's really going to be our retention vehicle. It's what's going to keep people on the platform. And then we're going to have our like slightly shorter form, more premium scripted content, and that is going to get them on the platform. And then the former did both, and the latter did neither. So it was a really easy decision once we took over the company to be like, well, let's stop producing shorter form, higher quality scripted programming because it's not doing anything.
Right.
And focus on this longer form unscripted content. And, our top 3 shows, which are Dimension 20, Game Changer, and Make Some Noise, are varying degrees of improv. It's like Make Some Noise is pure improv in the style of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Dimension 20, which is a TTRPG actual play show, is more of like you'd call it improv, but you'd also call it like unscripted in the sense of the individuals' personalities are like really coming through.
Right.
It's like hanging out. And Game Changer is probably a little closer to that too, where there's improv involved, but it's like, you're watching people have an experience.
Right.
Like that's the fun of it.
Dimension 20, by the way, is the go-to example because I get, I'd say once a month or so, somebody pitches me like, let's just do a D&D game and we film it. And I'm like,
yeah, there
are so many bad ways to do that. There are so many ways to assume that that's just going to be a hit because you enjoy it, but you enjoying it and the audience enjoying it are very different things.
Yeah, I think that it's a very crowded space and it's hard to like find room in the already crowded space for something that feels original. And I would say I marvel at how there seems to be audience for all of it.
I think it's like a parasocial thing of you want to watch. Like, why is there an audience for Study With Me videos? How is that a thing? Why is there an entire industry? Like you and I are like roughly the same age, I think, right?
Great question.
What year were you born?
How old are you? I'm 38.
I'm 41.
Okay, sure.
So roughly the same age.
Yeah.
When you were a kid and you're like playing video games with your friends and you're taking turns, when you're not holding the controller, you're waiting to hold the controller.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So why is there an entire industry now of watching other people play video games? That's the worst part.
It's a really good question. I don't, this sounds cynical, but like, I think loneliness is a factor.
Yes. The internet made us all crave human attention a little bit more. And very positively, I think this sort of person who would have been playing video games at home alone and not, as an adult and didn't have a lot of friends who could come play, it makes it easier to feel like you're social and to get social experiences that you yourself have not, developed for one reason or another.
I heard a theory that part of the reason that cooking shows are so popular these days is that we are missing the experience of the hearth. It's like a replacement biologically for the campfire, for all of us being gathered around the campfire together. So what you have instead are sort of like campfire simulators, which is like, I want to hang out and like watch food be cooked because it's comforting in the same way that it would be if I was watching like, a hog go round and round on top of a fire. I know it's kind of sad, but it's like, I do think that's the reason that a lot of this stuff is popular.
Yeah.
Is because it's like, it's friendship simulation, it's community simulation, it's,
So Dropout is what you watch when you want the experience of having friends. And Nebula is what you watch when you want to have the experience of learning something.
I do think that there is a component of Dropout that's that. But I think that what makes us most exciting and what I'm most excited to explore is, if you look at what Dimension 20 is, unscripted, and you look at what Game Changer is, unscripted. I'm doing a lot of air quotes for those of you who can't see me. What Makes Noise is unscripted. There's a lot of writing that goes into those shows. And what I'm really interested in is, in an era where we're almost allergic to scripted content because it comes across as so inauthentic now that we've had such a tremendous amount of exposure to like authenticity through platforms like TikTok and YouTube.
Yeah.
What are other interesting ways to straddle the line between scripted and unscripted?
I've talked about this before. I think you are 100% correct using the A word, using authenticity. I'm very frustrated by that word because I think it's been weaponized and packaged and sold back to us. I'm no longer interested in authenticity because authenticity is how you get the dipshit dilettante influencers who knows why they have an audience other than they look good with filters on their face. And this box I'm holding up now, my phone, this box has trained us to watch a certain format of show at a certain moment in our lives in the bathroom when you're standing in line. And the consumption, the ingestion of those things is very different from what you get from a television or from a theater screen. The kinds of the C word content that you other C word consume, it's a different experience, and we expect different things. We want different things. It serves a different purpose in our lives. And I think that what makes a really good parasocial creator relationship work is the exact same thing as what makes Ted Lasso work. And it's not authenticity, it's sincerity. Meaning what you say, not just saying something that sounds like you mean it, which is how I read the word authenticity, but actually meaning it. And when we work with creators and we see them trying new things, it's that sort of earnestness in the attempt. From what we've seen, that works really well, even if the concept itself isn't fully executed to perfection.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I I have very little tolerance for the pure, quote unquote, authentic influencer content, in the sense of, I don't think there's actually any there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the content that they're producing is immediately manipulative, because the purpose of that content is like, this content is about me connecting with you, even though that's not what I'm doing actually.
Yep.
I'm much more interested in, when I use the word authentic, like, case in point, love Tom Scott, love the work you've done with Tom. I met him recently for the first time in LA when he was passing through town. And I sat down with him and I realized I don't know anything about him. I mean,
it's by design.
Really interesting, like, multidimensional human being, by the way. But his
he too is a
content,
private person. He's very private.
Yeah, super private person. His content is fantastic and sincere. It doesn't reek of artifice. It's not like Tom is trying to be someone who he's not.
No.
But the content has real value, you know?
Yeah, I think the magic of Tom Scott is that he is exactly what he claims to be.
Sure.
Like, the even moments of friction he and I have had, privately or publicly, it's always because he is standing by what he believes in.
Sure.
And so am I. And I think that we respect each other more for those moments of friction, because it's not like, you're a jerk, I hate you. It's, I really believe thing. I really believe thing. Okay, how do we resolve this? And you get there in a different way when both people are coming at it from a perspective of not just trying to be right, but trying to, like, what is the best solution? And I don't mean it to be like we fight all the time. It's been like 2 things we've had slight disagreements over. But there's you learn a lot about a person's character in those moments where there's some heat, there's some friction.
Totally. Funny story, when we were going around trying to sell Adam Ruins Everything, and by extension Adam Conover, to television networks, there was a lot of, but this is really like a character, right? That we can, like, dial up and dial down. And if we need a version of Adam who's a little cooler or chiller or less opinionated or less abrasive, we can get that from you, right? This is a performance. And all of us, including Adam, would sit around in those rooms and say, yes, of course. When, like, that is exactly who Adam is. Like, Adam is the kind of person who will come into the kitchen and you're eating a bowl of granola and he will say, you know how bad that is for you, right? And we essentially, in order to convince networks on Adam Ruins Everything, we had to pretend that it was less authentic than it actually was.
That's amazing. Because they want a character. They want control.
Yeah, because they want something they can control.
Yeah, I think that so much of the influencer market is people selling you something. And by the way, I don't mean like sponsorships. That's whatever, ads are ads. But when the content itself is an ad. And here's the difference between authenticity and sincerity. Sincerity is, I have something I want to share. And authenticity is, I'm going to lean into things about me to sell you me. I am here to either sell a product, because this is a full-on integrated ad, or I'm here to sell myself because I am the product, so that you keep watching me and you keep coming back to the me store and buying more me, so that I can go buy a Lambo or, you know, whatever it is you want to get.
That is pretty sinister. It can get pretty sinister. I agree. I mean, I think all of us at Dropout are very conscious of the extent to which the audience really hungers for us as people, like, wants a direct sort of relationship with us, wants to know things about it. I mean, whatever aspect of our personal lives we serve up to them, they devour. And so all of us are actually, like, very careful not to serve up too much.
It's funny you'd say that. I've been so much more careful about personal life stuff over the last few years, because I hit a point where I just kind of felt like nobody cares. Nobody cares about my personal life. I don't need to tweet about who I'm dating or when I'm getting married or when I go on vacation. Like, who am I trying to impress? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
I don't care. And so I just kind of, like, stepped back from that. Working with this kind of creator, I realized, like, I need to dial that back a little bit, or it's going to be seen in a different way. And now, even though that it was a choice I made, nobody made me do that. But looking back, I'm glad that I did it that way, because now that Nebula's sort of taken on this life of its own and it's become sort of a parasocial character for people, I regularly get referred to in comments of videos or on our subreddit or on Twitter or whatever as like people just call me Dave Nebula. I am now a character to them.
You're like Tim Apple.
Yeah, exactly. And people will watch or listen to this show because they want more of like the insight into the Nebula thing. And so this wasn't supposed to be the Nebula show, but it kind of has become that because that's the part that people are interested in. And I'm very grateful to my past self for shutting the fuck up a little bit more because too much of my personal life now could be destructive. It could be, not because there's skeletons, but because it's, I don't know, I just kind of like keeping these things separate. I don't need...
I totally agree with you. I actually have a role model. I have someone whose social accounts I look at and I say, this is how to do it.
Oh, who?
And it's Weird Al Yankovic. Because Weird Al only ever tweets for his fan base. Mm-hmm. There's no other reason he tweets or posts anything to social media. He's like, this is for the collection of people that love me and what I do. And that's who I am servicing. All I want to be to these people really is the host of Game Changer and the CEO of this company. That's who I am to them. That's all I want to be to them.
When you talk about these role models, Weird Al, by the way, can you get any more sincere than Al?
I mean, there you go.
Like that, everything he does is like. Do you know him? Have you done stuff with him?
Yeah, we produced a couple of music videos with him.
He my only interaction I had, he was a guest on my old show. We did a revival episode towards the beginning of COVID where it was me and my old co-host and Weird Al just talking about our COVID lockdown experience. And he told the story about how he met his wife and like it was like one, it was just bonkers being on a Zoom call with Weird Al. For sure. But two, it's like you sort of 5 minutes in, you've forgotten that that's a thing, and you're just having a conversation with the sweetest person you've ever spoken to in your life. And like, he'll ask how you're doing or about your life, and it doesn't feel like a celebrity doing a thing. There's no bit. He's genuinely interested. So when you look at like who the role model should be, that sort of sincerity and that sort of like commitment to, I don't know how conscious it is. I don't know how other people do this. I find for myself, I often feel like I am an alien. I'm an alien sociopath trying to learn how to behave like a human. So I sort of
we all feel that way to a degree.
I sort of look at like this person handles this kind of situation really well. I should be more like that person. And I don't know how naturally it comes to somebody like him, but I look at my role models in a business sense, folks like Tim Cook or Kevin Feige, people who are like very, you never see them lose their cool. You never see them lose their shit. They're always kind of like, even if it's a tough moment, it's always like, and here's why that thing happened like that. Or, you know, these are the moments where, and they don't say anything bad. They're not here to talk shit. They're not here to stir up drama. They just want to do good work with good people and move on.
For sure.
Do you have to practice that? How do you get good at that kind of thing? You're on camera way more than me.
I've been on the internet for a long time. And I've actually had waves of popularity. So like when I was a part of the College Humor show on MTV in 2009, I went through a very brief period of time where I was like getting recognized on the street all the time. And then nobody knew me for a very long time. And then more recently have more notoriety again. And so there's a way in which I both appreciate the attention and also understand the inherent danger of the attention.
Do you see it as danger or do you see it as a responsibility?
Both, but definitely dangerous for sure. I mean, attention, notoriety can like really mess with people's heads. I've seen a lot of folks come through College Humor and go on to really meaningful notoriety. Not even just College Humor cast members, but like, you know, the folks who have come through the company and I've maintained relationships over the years. Watching them sort of grapple with being popular, it's like it can really mess with you or not. My father is a famous person. And I think that too kind of like helped show me kind of like the, you know, pluses and minuses of that kind of attention. And
I can hear a bunch of listeners right now opening new tabs as you say that. Like who?
Yeah, sure. So he's Robert Reich. He's former Secretary of Labor for Bill Clinton and a pundit kind of character. And it's funny because he too, you know, it's like he was Secretary of Labor for Clinton. And then he came out of the administration, like no one cared about him for a while. And then he became this like social media superstar. And now people really care about him again. So he's experienced his own waves of attention.
That's got to be healthy too, to like you build up your notoriety through the work you do and just the position you're in rather than like your persona. And so that later on, if you're doing a little bit more punditry or persona driven stuff, you've gotten there more organically. It's been a ramp up rather than like one day you're unknown and the next day you're mega famous.
Totally. I also think too, anyone who sort of like banks their reputation on their personality only, like what a fragile thing. Because like no one is purely good in the world. we did. So I was seeing a lot of stuff on social media about like how wholesome and good I seemed. And we did this quote unquote evil season of Game Changer where I was like super Machiavellian. I did a bunch of fucked up stuff. And then I started seeing comments along the lines of like, oh my God, I wouldn't want to like run into Sam Reich in a dark alleyway. And I was like, thank God, I'm so much more comfortable here.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like don't put me on a pedestal at all.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a line you have to walk too, because like you run a business and the way people see your character might affect the way people see the other parts of the business. Like I play a version of myself in the videos that Patrick Willems makes. He has these like scripted bits that are an in-universe, because he makes, if you haven't seen his stuff, he doesn't make video essays about movies. He makes movies about movies.
Yes.
And so I play a version of myself on the show, and like we'll have to sit down sometimes and talk through like, okay, I can't have this in the dialogue. And he's like, well, why not? It's like, this isn't real. And I'm like, because in the dialogue, we say something about needing to cut the budgets. And what you need to understand is I can't make a joke about needing to cut budgets because people will read that as like Nebula's having hard times.
Yeah.
We aren't. And so we have to like go through and completely rewrite the dialogue to it being a joke about how
it's a whole thing.
He had to cut his budgets because he wasn't worth the, so, you know,
yeah,
it's supposed to be self-deprecating, but it comes off as like, I can't say that, or I can't yell at an employee. I can't yell at a creator. Like that can't be my persona.
Totally.
Not because it's not funny. It is funny.
It's super tricky.
Imagine a worst case scenario where you make a joke about budget cuts and then 6 months later, there's an actual horrible thing that happens and you have to lay people off. And then now everyone's pointing at like, well, 6 months ago, you're making videos laughing at it. Like, no, God, that would be terrible.
Lately, there's been some folks, there's like, oh, like I'm such a Sam Reich fan. And someone, under will be like, Sam's a CEO. Why are you celebrating a CEO? And I want to be like, good for you. Do think critically about me. I'm not running a co-op.
Right.
I'm specifically not.
We're often accused of having we're a socialist streaming service. And it's like, nah, dude, I make money off of socialists talking about socialism. What does that make me? I don't know.
It's like, for the love of God, enjoy my work, but don't put me on some sort of ideological pedestal.
We are both in a position of we have businesses to run with employees, and we get to do the content creator dance out there, putting on the things that we want to put on and making things that we want to make. How do you balance the parts where you need to have fun and make fun shit versus the parts where you have to be really serious and make critical decisions that could affect people's paychecks?
It's funny when I think about like what I'm proud of. I'm obviously like really proud of Game Changer as a piece of work, but I am even more proud of Dropout as a company and the way in which we've been able to turn it around and provide content for an audience and provide opportunity for talent. I think I'm lucky that like there's a little bit of separation of church and state in terms of I have my shows where I get to like really play within the context of a budget. And then I have the macro job of like running the business and helping run other people's shows. But they don't directly interfere very much with each other. It's almost like, okay, time to produce my show, zoom in, micro experience. Okay, time to run the company, zoom out, macro experience. There's sometimes a little bit of competition within me when I want to do stuff that's like very ambitious and, creatively, the artist piece of you is always trying to create the best possible product, no matter how much it costs. And operationally, the executive part of you is always at war with that other half of yourself. I really do earnestly believe that some of the best creativity comes from limits.
Yeah, constraints. Absolutely.
It's like it's difficult to write poetry without meter and rhyme. You know, where it's like the constraints are actually like a part of the art form. And I love like the piece of Game Changer that's so fun creatively. No matter what, it's got to begin the same. It's like the way that the show goes is it always begins with my intro and I invite the guests out and we're on the set and we're in the studio and then I can venture off in any number of directions. But that restraint kind of reins it in both from a budgetary and a creative perspective.
Yeah, it enables you. If you can't think outside the box if you don't have a box. Like you have to start with something. That's the lump of clay. The clay is the constraint. Do you think of it as what you're building is you personally, not the company, but or do you think of what you're building is the library of content and the show formats and that is the legacy, or is the structure of Dropout the legacy? There's going to come a point somewhere in the distant future where you're like, I'm going to do something else, and you're going to hand somebody else the keys. Is the intent to hand somebody else the keys, or is the intent to just like, you know, you get hit by a bus, shut it all down? I'm taking a long way to say like, what is the thing that is most important for you to be remembered for?
Oh, wow. I do think it's the content first and foremost, you know? I mean, I think hopefully we are creating an environment that's conducive to creating some like really interesting and unusual stuff. And I'd like to be remembered for this stuff. You know, Dropout, I'm not trying to turn Dropout into some like really schmancy brand. My mission isn't that, you know, the term Dropout be sort of like a household name all over the world in the same way that Apple is. Like I want for people to love the shows first and foremost. If I got hit by a bus, I would hope that it would go on. I know it would. Because there's lots of other talented people involved in making Dropout go. But as far as handing over the keys is concerned, oh boy, I don't know about that. What about you, Dave, when it comes to Nebula and the brand and what do you want to be remembered for? What's your legacy?
I want out as soon as I can possibly get it. I'm sick of this shit.
I want to retire, buy a house in Hawaii.
I'm so tired. No, I feel like we're inventing a lot of things, not because they've never been done before, but because the tools to do the things we want to do just didn't exist for us. Nobody has done this for creators. Nobody has built a mainstreamification machine for creators. Nobody has built a streaming video platform that is owned by creators where they get to make the creative decisions, and it isn't
for sure.
Their success isn't determined by systems that they don't understand or control. Because so much of being a YouTuber is you have to have faith in a system that you don't understand or control, which brings you your audience, and a different system which you don't understand or control, which brings you the money. And those things are connected, but you're not really sure how. And you might think that you're successful because of this, but you're actually successful for this other thing. And because you didn't invest in this, you invested in the other thing. You're not as successful as you could be. There's all this tribal knowledge and urban legend and misinformation around how the system works. And what we're trying to invent are tools that help those smart, wonderful people who make those things make better things and get a better understanding of how the system works, so they can take more ownership of their work and then do better work, removing some constraints. As you know, things can be two things. There's part of me that wants and loves building those tools and finding interesting paths to developing new processes, new structures to help other people. But a lot of it is born selfishly out of just wishing I had those tools for myself. I spent years as a struggling musician, and years as a struggling YouTuber, years as a struggling podcaster, struggling, various degrees of success, but nothing super breakout. And it all came down to like frustration with, I wish I had better tools. Like if I could at the end, I'd like to build everything I could dream of and then go back in time and use those tools and build out like my actual creator career differently.
But being an inventor, that's how inventors thrive, right? I mean, that's how inventors work. It's like you see a hole in the market, and it's oftentimes associated with your own need.
Right.
It's like, why isn't there a can opener that's also a radio, to use a terrible example?
Yeah, that's why there's the old expression, desperation for fame and relevance is the mother of invention.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I don't know. It's a tough thing to do because I've been so much more fortunate and so much more successful building things than I have been at creating things. Like the shows I've done or things like with my band or whatever. So it's hard not to like take that as a hint from the universe that I should stay on this track. But at some point, it would be nice to take some of the things I've built and then go make some stuff. And I say that I've built, like I've got an amazing team of people, both on the staff side and on the creator side all around me who are like making this thing possible. I can't take all the credit or even most of the credit. But it would be great at some point to get to enjoy some of the things that we've done before I'm too old to make stuff.
I mean, I think balance, like you can find that balance, and it is helpful when you create something that's like important enough to the institution that then like doing it doesn't feel totally selfish. It's like, oh, actually, this is like an important part of the business model.
Yeah, I could greenlight any show I want to make right now, but that's,
For the first 2 seasons of Game Changer, that was not the case.
Really?
It was only really in season 3 that the show became super relevant to the business.
I would have guessed that would have been more of a thing earlier on.
It was immediately very popular, but there just wasn't very much of it.
Oh, I see.
It was until we figured out how to produce it more and more at scale that it was like, oh, this is now, important to the business. But conversely, like we need more folks who are creative and speak the language of creative people in seats like yours.
Or yours.
Sure, or mine. I mean, I think largely our types of seats are filled by those who like really can't.
Yes.
And like that is a problem. Or have no direct interest, who are like, I'm like really interested in the world of the arts, but because I'm not at all interested in producing art, I became an agent or a manager.
Right.
Or, and now I'm in the world of like monetizing it. Like that's actually kind of a problem, I think. Like, you start to look at like stuff like this as assets in a bank vault, because you're not more intimately familiar with how it works.
And it's about understanding the not just the process, but the value of the process. My friend Renee Ritchie, who's also the creator liaison now at YouTube, so he is the person who works between YouTube as the thing and the creators, trying to help people reconcile their needs. He talks a lot about the difference between mining and farming. And there's a lot of people in, I think Hollywood certainly, but in this industry, the creator economy, as the kids are calling it, who they see what we do or what influencers do, what creators do. It's all about, it's a resource to be mined. You must come in and extract as much value as you can from this, and then you win. And then there are people who see it as farming, where you come in and you create systems, you add value, and then later things grow out of that, and you can enjoy that harvest. But then things keep growing, but you have to keep putting a little bit more into it. And there's like a stable ecosystem you're aiming for.
Absolutely. I want to be really careful here not to demonize anybody involved in this. And I'm going to keep it vague, the name's vague. But there was someone who came to me recently who works for a major media company and said, we want to buy Game Changer. Isn't that? And the assumption was like, isn't that great news? Like, we want to buy it. We want it for ourselves, but we will need to own it completely. And, and as if the work that I had been doing on it was merely to create an asset that would one day be valuable to someone like them.
This is a Hollywood media company or a creator economy media company?
No, a Hollywood company.
There is a creator economy media company who is going around right now trying to buy channels, trying to buy up YouTube channels so that they get access to the catalog, so that they can distribute it and license it and monetize it in other markets, and do content licensing distribution deals all over the place. Because again, they see it as like, you come in and you buy the rights to the mine and you own all of the gold in it. They're not interested in planting more seeds. They're not interested in sowing. They just want to come and reap.
To your point, Dave, I mean, like they're so desperate now because they haven't been running healthy ecosystems. I mean, for the most part, these ecosystems are unhealthy. And so they're in the practice of piracy, not in the Hollywood sense, but in the plundering sense.
Yeah.
Which is like, we're going to come in and we're going to grab stuff, and it doesn't matter. It could be a book, or it could be a, web series, or it could be a this or that. And we just got to like get it out and see if it works, and it'll probably crash and burn.
Yep.
And it's all they're getting more desperate because these ecosystems are becoming less healthy.
There's a Venn diagram of internet nerds who are going to lose their minds that we're doing this.
Sure.
Show. The question, we've been getting this a lot lately. I think because of people seeing some similarities in a couple of things. And I don't know how much you're hearing this, but we are definitely getting the question of like, wouldn't it be cool to do a crossover thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how far down this trail we should walk right here, right now. But I'll go on record as saying like, I'm absolutely down. I love what you guys are doing. We're all big fans over here. It's cool to have you on this show. It's cool to talk about this stuff. Just like for me personally, it's cool. Like, 'cause again, don't get to talk to many other people who do this job. But it's also as a community, the creators over here, staff over here, like genuinely, we're fans of what you guys are doing. So if there's a thing we can do, like, hey, we're in.
I 100% agree and am also down. And I think you know that.
It might even be that I didn't bring this up without having some. Well, I'll speak transparently a little bit. Like from the first time we talked, it's like, man, it'd be cool if we did something. Like, yeah, and then it's a matter of like, we just got to figure out what that thing is. And I'm sure that we'll get tweets about what that should be, and some of those we already have, and some of them are pretty good ideas. But yeah, I think that like Dropout is Nebula with a drink in its hand, and Nebula is Dropout with a book in its hand, maybe.
That's great.
Something like that. So
that's a lot of fun.
I never would have guessed, like coming into this before, I forget how we got connected. I think it was like a Twitter thing, and maybe Ben, I think maybe did an email.
Oh, was it Ben? It totally could have been. Ben is like the great connector.
He doesn't even have a Twitter account. Isn't that crazy?
That is wild.
Like I mean, not that I'm aware of anyway. Like I can't find that guy on social media. I think he's on LinkedIn, which would make sense. Yeah. But like he's this incredibly well connected dude who like always in the shadows, always connecting people. Ben Rellis, that guy's like amazing.
He's what Malcolm Gladwell would call the networker.
Yeah, yeah. When people started talking about, I think my first introduction to you really was people tweeting at me that you should be on this show, and then like I think we wound up following each other and we exchanged like some DMs or something, and then Ben was the one to like actually make a connection happen. But from then I wouldn't have predicted necessarily that it would make a ton of sense for us to do anything together, that it would make any sense. It's like, oh, we're the nerdy stuff, you're the funny stuff. But like as we go further down this path, it's like it really is a much tighter Venn diagram than I would have expected.
Yeah, I mean the truth, especially like once you start stripping away the particular content types, but even then, I mean like jet lag is jet lag right now your biggest show? Are you allowed to say that?
The truth is jet lag is not our biggest show by views, by watch hours, by conversions, by revenue. Sure. It is our biggest show by volume. And by volume, I mean fans yelling about it.
Yeah,
we have a very vocal audience that our biggest shows don't have. And that's incredibly important. And it's not to discount the impact of jet lag, because on all of those fronts, it is definitely up there, way up there. Yeah. But the assumption that it's the biggest is interesting to me because that assumption I think is mostly made on how passionate the fans are. But I also want to be careful not to discount how important all of the other shows are. And the reason I care about this, the reason it's worth articulating that is it's by design. If we had one show that was so big that if jet lag, disappeared tomorrow, we'd be out of business. Yeah. That's not the case. And that's a good thing.
Oh, for sure.
Nobody wants that to be the case. Sam from Wendover included does not want that to be the case. So it is definitely way up there. Definitely way up there.
Yeah, I think, my point is like a network is always only ever like one hit away from being redefined in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And like,
oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
There is a huge amount of crossover between what jet lag is and what our most popular programming is. Like, huge amount of crossover.
We've been hearing a lot about that from fans who have also noticed. And so now, like, it's funny. I'm sure you get a similar thing where even creators will see how well jet lag's doing and how popular it is. And now creators are coming to us like, hey, I want to do a thing like jet lag. What if I did? And the pitches aren't bad. It's just interesting that like they are definitely different now. People are like, that looks like fun. Yes. I want to do, not even the success. People are like, that looks like a ton of fun. I want to do something really fun and on camera like that. How do we do a show like that for me?
100%. I mean, it circles back to this, thing of like people only know what they've seen works, right? So we get pitches along the lines of Game Changer all the time.
No surprise there.
No surprise there. But then Game Changer itself, because it has to be different every episode, it's like I just suck them all in like Kirby. And
it's like, great idea. You're
just
on the
make
next.
them great. Now it's a Game Changer idea. How about that?
Yeah. That's a good. Ooh, that's what we need.
Yeah.
We need the show where everybody's pitches get rolled into that new show.
Yeah, you just pass all those pitches off to Wendy and have.
Yeah. So like, no joke. This show is me taking all the calls I have to do all day and turning it into content. So
there you go. That's super efficient right there.
Yeah. This is just more Zoom calls for me. Let's go. Like I said, there's a cross section of shared audience here who's going to be really happy that we did this. And I think those are the people I would be willing to bet that this is the episode that gets the most people who listen all the way through.
Oh, wow. I like that bet.
Even the parts where we're both definitely going to get canceled. So there is that.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you again for doing this. This is it's
my pleasure, Dave.
It's neat that we've been able to connect over the last few months and talk about this stuff and Nebula and Dropout getting to become friends. It's cool to think about all the stuff that could come out of that. But it's also just really great to talk to you. You've got such a great perspective on all this stuff. I really appreciate it. Thank you for that.
Man, you too. I mean, peas in a pod.
I know.
It's nice to have anyone to talk to about this stuff.
Well, we'll have to do this again. Maybe near water under the sun with some drinks.
Hell yeah. Love that.
Down.
Love that vision.
All right. For the people who have no idea who you are, where can they find you on
Yes. You can find me at the handle Sam Reich, SAMREICH, on all of your social medias. And you can find our content on dropout.tv. We have some fun Dropout.tv subscribers who I can't tell you who they are because it would be a TOS violation.
I never looked. I've never looked to see who.
Yeah.
Because do you collect names in addition to email addresses? We only get email addresses and sign up.
I only know this via hearsay. I haven't actually looked.
Yeah. Our hope is that maybe Taylor Swift is a big jet lag fan and I can get her on this show to talk about creator economy stuff. So Taylor, if you're listening, let's talk sponsors.
Do it, Taylor. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks, Sam.